Good afternoon, everyone. I am Joe Sullivan. I'm a supervisor with the Delaware Public Archives, and thank you for joining us today for your Professional Development Day. So today we're going to be going over some of the resources that are available for teachers here at the archives, both in terms of historical primary sources, the kind of prepackaged resources that we have available for you to use in your classrooms, as well as some of the ways that we can support you directly as educators. So starting off, a little bit of context about our institution. So we were founded in 1905, making us the third oldest archive in the country. And our job here is to store and preserve the historic records of the state of Delaware, the records that are created by Delaware's government throughout the years, throughout the centuries, as a matter of fact, as well as historic collections from Delaware citizens, including private correspondence, photographs, things like that that have been donated to us that we preserve. We pretty actively work with the public. We try to make our materials as open and accessible as possible so that people can see them, learn from them, derive value from them. Part of our role in state government is to help hold government accountable by making the records of our government accessible to the public. And so we work with members of the public who are researchers and genealogists who are interested in learning from us. We also help students and educators with their research, with materials for school classes and such. So starting off, we're going to be introducing our educator resources page. So this is something we've introduced recently to kind of be a one-stop shop for teachers to kind of pull together all of our materials, everything that you can use, everything that we've made available. And all of this, I want to be very clear, is completely free of charge. We provide this as a public service. We are here to support you. So let me go ahead and open this up and show everyone what we're looking at. So this is our educator resources page, and this is your main hub for everything that we have to offer. So kind of starting off here at the top of the page, something we've introduced recently, kind of in conjunction with the approaching 250th anniversary, we like to develop student activities, things that we can kind of package together for students to kind of participate in and learn from. And the most recent project we undertook was we call Road to Liberty, which is actually an interactive board game for students. And this uses primary sources from Delaware and the Revolutionary War. It's kind of loosely modeled on Candyland. Students can play through. As they play, they'll encounter cards that affect the game, but are also based on original primary sources, and each card actually has the source on it where it can be located in our collection. Right now, we're planning to have that in the archives as an activity for students who are on site, but we do, until we can get any kind of more broad distribution, we also have all of the associated files, cards, and records available for download here on our resources page. Scrolling down a bit, we will have any kind of resource and research guides that we've created that we're posting, kind of resources page that we're preparing. We have some here that we'll kind of get into in greater detail later in the presentation. So all of those resources are available from this page. We also have assessments and lesson plans and instructional videos, all of which can be accessed from here. These are usually produced in conjunction with teachers that have worked with us for professional development days to produce content. And so they're kind of working with us, using our materials and making this all available to you to download off of our website. Scrolling down a bit more here. So all of our lesson plans are available through here. They're grouped in grade levels. So we open up here, grade 5 and under. We can see some examples that we have here. So all of this, as I said, you can download directly from the website, lesson plan, any associated records, handouts, materials, everything is available for free through this page on our website. These cover a variety of topics throughout Delaware history, from kind of the early colonial period through to kind of the modern era, the civil rights era. Just about anything you can imagine, we probably have something prepackaged and ready for it. We do also encourage you, if there's a topic that you're interested in, if there's something specific that you're looking for, if you're developing lesson plans on your own and you're interested in resources for them, please reach out to us by phone, by email. We are happy to try and accommodate anything that we can. We can't necessarily make plans like this kind of on demand, but if you've got something in mind that you're working on, we can certainly look through our collections and find whatever supporting material we can to kind of help you with your own lesson plans. So next up, we want to talk about on-site professional development days and student workshops. So we have worked with school districts around the state at this point to be readmitted. to set up these kind of opportunities in the research room here at the archives. And we've had very good feedback from these. So typically what we'll do is, an individual teacher or a department will come to us. They'll say, we're interested in information on these specific topics. We will then go through our collections. We'll kind of canvass our materials, find records that we believe might be valuable for use in lesson plans that may be interesting for teachers, that provide information that they could find useful. And we will pull all of that out. We will have the research room reserved for however long you want. So the entire space is to you. And we'll have everything laid out. Archivists will be at every table to answer questions. Sorry, Latoya, did you have a question, or we just?
No, sorry.
No, sorry. So this really is whatever you need it to be. If there are particular topics that you or your department are looking for, we will tailor the experience to that. Anything that you need, we can pull out, we can provide for you. We can also prepare similar experiences for students. This started a few years ago. We had a teacher, local teacher here from Campus Community approach us. This was kind of right as students were coming back into the classroom after COVID, and she was saying that her students were having trouble with doing research, kind of going through the process, and especially kind of interpreting primary sources. And so we developed a very hands-on workshop where the whole class came in. We had original primary sources, in that case from the Second World War. Students were able to actually see the original documents, hold them in their hands, read them, go through their worksheets, compile information, and actually get a chance to do hands-on research with original materials. There were archivists at every station to answer student questions, to ensure that they were handling records properly. And we got incredible feedback from the teacher. She was very happy with the experience. It ended up being kind of a yearly thing, bringing the class in. And she even brought in additional field trips from there. So we've had great feedback from those experiences for students. We're one of the only places that either educators or students can come in the state and actually kind of see and hold these types of materials. Unlike a museum where it's all kind of behind glasses and display case. All of this is accessible, able to be viewed directly by the public. So it really kind of helps history come alive when you can actually see the original materials, the actual physical thing from sometimes hundreds of years ago in front of you to actually see and learn from it. Got a few examples of just some of the topics that have been requested. We've been able to accommodate all of these and more. So again, anywhere from the breadth of Delaware's history, from kind of the early colonial period in the 17th century through kind of the modern era, we've been able to accommodate anything that you're looking for. If there's a particular type of record, type of information, whether it's a broad topic or something very specific, we will work with you. We'll go through our collections. We'll find everything that we can. And then if you have any kind of specific requests, we've also done staff presentations during these. If there's a specific topic you want to know more about, or maybe want more information about how to access or interpret these types of records, we're also happy to accommodate that as well. We also offer, as part of for State Heritage Park, we do field trip opportunities, student tours, and activity days. If you are booking these kind of events with us, you can also plan visits to the other locations around First State Heritage Park. So that, for example, Legislative Hall, the old State House, John Bell House, the Biggs Museum of American Art, the Johnson Victrola Museum. So you can just come and visit the archives, or you can kind of plan a bigger day to kind of go around some of the other sites. So we have a few examples of some of the hands-on activities that we've designed for students who are joining us from field trips. We have a records intake activity that's all about showing students the process where we get records from state agencies, how we have to kind of sort them, classify them, create content lists. It's sort of a kind of matching activity, a hands-on activity where students can go through. They have copies of records. We don't use originals for this, where they can kind of see what they are, kind of match them up to content lists, match them up to boxes and barcodes and appropriate box numbers, and kind of give them a chance to see kind of part of the administrative process of having to kind of organize and keep records, coordinated and accessible. Our most popular by far has been our card catalog activity, which a lot of our teachers have been very tickled with. And this is kind of a hands-on research tutorial where we bring in students, we provide them with references for historic documents, things like birth or marriage certificates or probate files. And they get a chance to, using old style card catalog finding aids, like locate references, match those references up to collections of records, go into boxes, pull the records out, see what they are, and actually get a chance to kind of sit down and interpret the original documents. Now, again, we use copies for that. For these kind of hands-on, more dynamic activities, we won't pull out originals for that, but we can certainly pull out originals for other kinds of workshops. Within this activity, we'll also pull out examples of microfilm readers, so students get a chance to see not just paper documents, but also microfilm or microfiche, see some of the ways that information gets recorded in addition to paper records. They really particularly enjoy using some of the older fashioned hand cranked microfilm readers. And lastly, we have a disaster recovery activity. Part of what we do here at the archives is conservation. So we take documents that are kind of a preservation risk due to their age or their condition, and we kind of make sure that they're maintained and kept safe. And part of that is having a plan for the event that there's some kind of a disaster, a water or fire emergency. And so in this, we will have a tub of water and a series of kind of mock records, paper records, VHS tapes, CDs, hard drives, things like that, and actually kind of dunk them into the water and then give the students an opportunity to have this hands-on experience to see like how we would go about preserving a water damaged document. So, there are always a ton of hands shooting up whenever the instructor says, who wants to help destroy something? But it gives them an opportunity to kind of interact with how different types of records, different means of data storage kind of interact with that sort of condition, like how you would prioritize saving one thing over another, the different kind of risks that are posed to it. During this, we also talk about what we refer to as the agents of deterioration, which are kind of the different factors that can cause records to be damaged or destroyed over time. Obviously, water is kind of the direct case in that example, but we're also talking about things, fire, theft, kind of things like light and humidity and how they can damage documents, talking about dissociation, kind of forgetting why something is significant or important, and talking about our role in kind of recording things, making them accessible, making sure things remain organized, properly stored and indexed, and so that we can kind of do our job so that we can make sure these records are preserved and available. In addition to these activities, we also conduct programs and educational presentations at the archives. So in the case of kind of regularly scheduled material, we do programs first Saturday of every month, starting at 10:30 a.m. We also do programs at local libraries throughout the state. They'll request specific programs. At times we'll come in. We have an events calendar that lists all of these kind of pre-planned programs. In the past, we've had teachers reach out to us to coordinate extra credit opportunities for their students. So if they attend these events for the specific programs, they can get extra credit. We've agreed to kind of sign their forms to denote their attendance. As a matter of fact, the highest attended First Saturday program that we have, it was actually this past March. It was for a Women's History Month presentation. And we had almost 30 students from Dover High School attend for extra credit. The teacher was exceptionally pleased. In addition to everything that we have regularly scheduled, we will also coordinate these around your schedule. So if there is a presentation that you're interested in, and I can drop a list of the topics that we have in the chat, we cover everything from kind of the basics of doing genealogical research with original records to the history of crime and punishment in Delaware, a variety of different subjects. We can come to your class as a guest speaker. We are happy to give these programs for you in person. We can also do these virtually by Zoom or Microsoft Teams, anything like that. So if you're interested in one of these programs from the archives, let us know and we can certainly arrange something that works best for you. I mentioned the upcoming 250th anniversary earlier. So 2026 will be the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence and the beginning of the Revolutionary War. And this is a huge undertaking for archives, historical institutions, as we're kind of preparing for this big event. And to kind of help commemorate that and play our role, we've developed kind of our own resources page for this, kind of pulling together, similar to our educator resources page, everything that we have for the 250th, kind of putting out content. And so we'll show some examples of what we have here. So all in one place, if this is a subject that you're teaching, particularly in regard to like Delaware history, we have various research and resource guides available here. Digitized collections, we have been adding to this pretty heavily as we're kind of building up to the big anniversary. We've been going through scanning more and more collections to be able to kind of upload them here to be fully accessed online. We also have a variety of ebooks. All of these are available to download for free from the archives website, all regarding the Revolutionary War. All of our lesson plans specifically relating to the Revolution are posted here as well, in addition to our educator resources page. So if you're looking for this subject in particular, all of this is posted here and readily available. I showed you Road to Liberty earlier. Hopefully we're going to be able to distribute that more broadly, but in the meantime, all of the materials for it that we used are downloadable here if you wanted to do your own rendition of it. We have been doing, as I mentioned, programs. Just recently, we hosted a teacher symposium, a huge on-site professional development day. We brought in staff from historical sites around the state to kind of showcase the educational resources and field trip opportunities they have. We had presenters talking all about Delaware's history and the Revolutionary War, talking about the different kind of resources available here at the archives, at the Delaware Historical Society, how teachers can use them and how they can request them. We are certainly planning to do more of these. I believe tentatively we have one planned for next spring that I believe is going to focus on the history of the civil rights movement. So stay tuned for more information on that. We are also blogging. We've been putting out some historical blogs specifically about the Revolution. Here are a few here that actually I've submitted, talking about a variety of topics. So far, we have ones posted on the history of privateers in Delaware during the Revolutionary War and kind of the pirates that were operating off our coast, both kind of defending our waterways and attacking them, as well as a little bit about John Dickinson and his role in the administration of the Delaware militia. So again, more content will be coming there. Let's see, let me get back to the PowerPoint. So next up, I wanted to highlight some of the specific primary sources, some of the major topics that we get requested a lot that teachers are looking for material to support. And so we'll start off with geography. This has been a big one lately. And we have a couple different types of sources here that can help out with these lessons. And so starting out, the example that we have on the screen here, this is Delaware's Royal Charter from 1682. This is what kind of formally established Delaware initially as a colony. The gentleman in the top left is King Charles II, and this document is significant because it kind of established Delaware's borders. Notably, it establishes the capital at the city of Newcastle and instructs them to draw a 12-mile circle from the capital, and that will denote our northern border. This is the reason that Delaware is the only state with a rounded border. So this is a pretty significant document, kind of laying out kind of the early boundaries of our territory. This would remain fairly significant. There was a court case in the 2000s in which New Jersey was trying to build piers and off into the Delaware River, Delaware Bay, for oil tankers. We disputed that because under the terms of this charter, our border actually extends all the way to the high water mark on the New Jersey side. So all of that is technically part of Delaware, and this document was taken to the Supreme Court, and actually we won that case as a result of the terms that were set forward in it. So it's a great example of how some of these records, even incredibly old ones, can still be relevant to life today. The history of Delaware's boundaries and borders is a complicated one, from the disputes between Lord Baltimore and William Penn over exactly where our boundaries lined up with Maryland, to our role in the drawing of the Mason-Dixon line. Delaware is the only state that is not completely north or south of the Mason-Dixon. We're technically east of the Mason-Dixon line. And so we have many of these early historical records where they're kind of more solidly establishing the exact metes and bounds of the state. So another good example, we have very extensive map collections here at the archives. The example we have on the screen here, this is from the Beers Atlas, printed in 1868. And this is one of the Atlas's 100 maps. So this is for Indian River 100, and hundreds are kind of a unique element of Delaware's geography. They were kind of first ordered to be drawn up by William Penn in the early 1680s during the proprietary period. And they're sort of the equivalent to townships in other states. They're kind of a subdivision between county and cities and towns. The nomenclature 100, it's kind of an Old English term, and the origin isn't super clear. There have been a variety of suggestions over the years, an area that could raise 100 men for the militia, an area where 100 families are settled. It's not really made clear in Penn's documents, which we do have here, that actually lay out how he is beginning to kind of organize and administrate the state in those early days. But the Beers Atlas is an incredible resource. It provides very detailed maps of each individual 100 and of a variety of towns and cities throughout Delaware. In addition to these types of maps, we have a variety of maps from throughout Delaware's history, including topographical maps. We have aerial photographs, a ton of different materials if you're looking at the geography of Delaware and kind of its region. So next up, a very big topic, one that we get requested a lot, is Native American history. And we have a huge variety of records in our collection that can support this, all the way from the very beginning of our holdings through to much more modern records. So the example we have here, this is an original deed from 1685 of a property transaction between Iwotama Sawum, a Native American, and two men from Sussex County. So we have some of the very earliest recorded land transactions between the indigenous peoples here in Delaware and some of the settlers. These take a variety of forms. Some are kind of longer form than others. And this is an interesting part of the conversation. There's kind of disputes among historians as to whether or not the Native American populations who were entering into these kind of transactions really understood what was going on. It wasn't really their custom to have kind of this type of private property ownership. And so these are a fascinating evidence of kind of that moment in history where they are first beginning to kind of purchase land, often in not very equitable transactions, from Native Americans and beginning to move in and settle in those territories. So next up, a major topic, as we see, and the example here we have is for the Nanacoke tribe in southern Delaware, we can see is their establishment of their identities, legally establishing their identities. And for the Nanacoke, as an example, that really begins in 1855. This is a court docket from the Sussex County Court of General Sessions in April of that year, and this is for State of Delaware v. Levin Sockham. Levin Sockham was a Nanacoke man. He managed a general store in Sussex County, and he was brought up on charges after he had sold ammunition to his brother-in-law. And the charge that he was brought up on was that it was illegal to sell arms or ammunition to a Negro, according to the law. And the court at the time decided that Levin Sockham, his brother-in-law, as Nanacoke, were covered by that law. And Sockham appeared in court. He disputed this, and essentially they were presenting to the court that they were Nanacoke. They were their own people. They had their own identity, and that they weren't affected by that law. And the court decided to rule against him and decided that they could interpret that as applying to the Nanacoke. This was also one of the last times that the Nanacoke language was spoken in public in a Delaware court. And so this legal defeat we kind of consider to be sort of the starting point of the modern push of the Nanacoke people to have official recognition of their tribal identity. We have the dockets from this case, as well as a variety of summons and testimonies that were given. So we have pretty much all of the details of the proceedings of this case. Where this will really come to a head historically is kind of around the turn of the century, as the Nanacoke start pushing for kind of equity in schooling and accommodation, and kind of finally get a more official recognition of their tribal identity. We can see some references here from our enrolled bills collections. These are bills being passed through the General Assembly. We can see the top where they're starting to establish free public schools for the Nanacokes. It refers to them as certain Indians or Moors. The term Moor, you'll see, refers specifically to mixed race communities within the Nanacoke, specifically Nanacoke and African American. We would see them kind of delineated in this process. We'd see kind of separate schools created for both, as they're kind of recognizing both identities. And another in 1903, an act to better establish the identity of a race of people known as the offspring of the Nanacoke Indians, where they're actually more officially, legally recognizing the tribes. Okay, continuing along this process, a very interesting collection we have here. We have insurance evaluations from the Department of Education, where they're going through photographing each of the schools throughout the state, describing them, identifying their size, their valuation. And within this, you can see kind of interesting disparity between, on the left, the Warwick Colored School, one of the early Nanacoke schools, and Millsboro Public School, the white school on the right. You can see there's a huge difference in the size of the school, the value of the property, the facilities. This is also a great collection when you're looking at the history of colored schools in terms of African American education in Delaware, and we'll get into some of that more later. So in addition to that process, we also have throughout governor's papers and state photograph collections a variety of supporting material looking at those early Native American schools in Delaware. We have some correspondence here on the left from our governor's paper and a photograph of one of the classes on the right from one of the Nanacoke schools. So the next subject we'll tackle is Black history. And in particular, we've been consolidating resources here in support of educators with the passage of House Bill 198 that is now kind of mandating more Black history be incorporated into curriculum. So we want to do everything that we can to provide resources for educators to make that accessible. And so we have created a resource guide on our website specifically for Black history and the kind of resources that we have to support that curriculum. So similar to kind of our 250 page, so here we kind of have all of our consolidated materials, and this is kind of a sampling of what we have. We have a vast amount of material in our collections that can support this. We have subject guides, digitized items and collections, kind of covering a variety of topics. We have some examples of prominent oral histories related to Black history in Delaware. Ebooks that can be downloaded, again, for free, freely from the website. We have some additional collections that are highlighted here, some of which are digitized and can be accessed in their entirety through our website, as well as some links to additional resources that can be helpful. So to highlight a few specific topics of note, some you may be familiar with, some you may not. A good example of one you may not be familiar with. We have here a photograph from the African-American CCC camp in Lewis. So this is the Civilian Conservation Corps. This was a public works program put forward by the Works Progress Administration during the Great Depression to try and get Americans back to work. And it was specifically doing environmental conservation projects. These kind of camps were set up throughout Delaware, and it was proposed to create one specifically for African Americans because these were segregated camps. To provide work opportunities to that community. And this ended up being very contentious, as some of the local communities in Sussex County didn't really like the idea of having this camp located near their communities. And we have a variety of records from that perspective as well. We have correspondence in our governor's papers from at that time where they're coordinating with the federal level to create this camp, to get it set up, to coordinate with the broader Civilian Conservation Corps. And on the right, we have an example of a large number of correspondence that was being sent to the governor at the time with some very strong opinions from members of the public about the establishment of these camps and the introduction of this program. That is part of the public record. We do not censor history here at the Public Archives. Everything that we have, the good, the bad, and the ugly, remains preserved in our collections to be learned from. It's a very important part of it, and these letters definitely go a long way to demonstrating just a small amount of the racial tension that was around at the time. So another excellent example here, we have the original Beulah letters. These are associated with Beulah v. Gebhardt, and also Belton v. Gebhardt, Delaware's cases in Brown v. Board of Education. These are notable for a variety of reasons. These were chronologically the first cases as Delaware schools were seeking to end segregation, or Delaware citizens were seeking to end segregation in Delaware schools. They're very notable in that of the 5 cases in Brown v. Board, the 2 Delaware cases were the ones in which the state courts struck down segregation rather than upholding it. They would all eventually kind of get lumped into the umbrella of Brown v. Board, where it would all be settled at a more federal level. But we have the original letters from the families that were being sent to the state to raise this issue, as well as a variety of materials around the time, both from the cases themselves and from the response throughout the broader communities. We see during this time a large number of boycotts happening around the state, kind of opposing desegregation. We can see kind of sentiments being expressed in correspondence to Delaware's government, the Department of Education, and the governor. We also have a recording in our collection, an audio recording from a rally hosted by the National Association for the Advancement of White People, given by a man named Bryant Bowles. He was kind of a KKK affiliate, and he came down into Milford, particularly to kind of stir up trouble against desegregation. We actually have the full-length audio from a rally he held there. And I will warn you, it is quite intense, but it is part of the historical narrative. It is part of the the evidence of all of this that we have, and we want to make this as accessible and open as we can. We have all of these materials. We want to make sure that people are able to see them and learn from them. Kind of returning to insurance evaluations, these are incredibly useful for looking at this time period. We can see some examples here. The Hockessin Public School, which was one of the schools in question during this time, and the Hockessin Colored School. And we can see here very clearly the disparity between the sizes of the facilities, the value of the properties, all of this. These are very interesting collections for looking at kind of the history of education in Delaware, but also for kind of looking at the disparity in specific schools and how they're accommodating different communities. So some other good examples, and this is an example specifically that a teacher we've worked with, she is used very prominently in her lesson plans. This is part of the property record for the subdivision of Eastover Hills here in Dover. And this is a great example of restrictive covenants, where we can see in some of these early deeds and property records, they're setting forth conditions that land cannot be sold to people of color. Again, this is a hot topic lately, as there's been kind of legislation introduced for people to be able to remove this kind of language from their deeds. That's kind of just remained in there for years because people haven't really noticed it. The response that we've gotten from the teacher in question, she had said that using this kind of material, having it be something that's local, she finds it really kind of impacts the kids differently. It kind of resonates differently. She'll kind of go through this information, talk about these restrictive covenants, how these affected people's ability to purchase homes and where they could purchase them. And when she tells them that this is the community right near TGI Fridays in Dover, it's like a whole different thing for the kids, realizing that this isn't just something that happened, a long time ago, far away. This is something that happened right in their communities, right in places that they know that they've been to. And so we find that a lot of these materials, being able to give it that kind of local spin, it gives it a little bit different level of impact. So we have a variety of materials in our collection regarding the history of slavery in Delaware. And this is one of the most interesting sources that we have. This is an inventory of slave owners in Sussex County. This is dated to around 1866. When this document was originally found, it wasn't very clear as to what this was. It was kind of, when the document was located, there wasn't any documentation with it providing context for why this was drawn up. We believe that it was possible that this was created in an attempt to kind of acquire compensation to former slave owners after abolition, to kind of seek compensation for lost value and property. But it is a fairly complete inventory of slave ownership in Sussex County. These types of records, we have manumissions from this period where individuals are receiving their freedom. Most of the records related to kind of the ownership and transfer of slaves are actually located within deed books because they were considered property. So they were being recorded alongside purchase and sale of land in these deed collections. Within these books, you'll find manumissions. Sometimes you'll even find birth records for slaves where they felt that that needed to be recorded. Delaware for a long time maintained a court, the court for the trial of Negroes, where they would specifically handle offenses committed by African Americans, but it would also handle cases involving freedom seekers who escaped from their enslavers and were later recovered. So we have a variety of collections that can be used for this as well. So a subject that often kind of gets lost in the mix is actually the history of free people of color, particularly in Delaware. Delaware for a very long time had a very large free Black community, particularly here in Kent County. The example here, we have some entries from the tax assessment book from Kent County in the 1800s. And here we see an individual listed, Absalom Gibbs. Absalom Gibbs, during his life, was actually the third most substantial landowner in Kent County. He was a free person of color. He owned a very successful brickyard around Camden, and his family lived there for generations. The story of people like Absalom Gibbs and other free people of color in Delaware often kind of gets lost in the broader narrative, but many of them were part of our communities. We've found record of free people of color and enslaved persons serving in the Delaware Regiment during the Revolutionary War, not as laborers or as supporting troops, but as fighting men who've been kind of identified through pension records. We've actually been able to concretely identify these people as African American or as mixed race, mixed African American and Native American, and kind of more completely document their service to America's founding. One of the most recent set of resources that we pulled together in support of House Bill 318, looking at kind of the Jewish history and Holocaust education, we pulled together a resources page for Jewish history in Delaware. Get that opened up. Now, unfortunately, we don't have quite as much for this subject as we do for Native American history and Black history, but we've pulled together what we have, and we have some very valuable resources available here. So in the same vein, we have general reference files that are available from the archives. We'll be adding those in digitized format, hopefully. One that I'd like to note that's very important, the third line here, the Jews in Delaware Materials in the Yale University Library. This is a video archive of interviews conducted with Holocaust survivors after World War II. And we, in our holdings, have an index specifically of all of the individuals in these interviews who settled in Delaware afterwards. So if you're looking at kind of a local take on Holocaust survivors, you can use our holdings to kind of better navigate those broader collections. We also have a variety of pamphlets that are available throughout our pamphlet collections, all about the history of the Jewish community in Delaware. We have a few collections available with a substantial amount of resources for Jewish history, as well as some motion pictures from our motion picture collections, including some combat bulletins from World War II regarding the Holocaust. So if you're interested in using our collections, we have a variety of online resources that you can use to navigate our holdings to kind of see what we have available. And the first is the Delaware Public Archives portal. This is our content management system. This is used to kind of navigate what our holdings are, what the archives contains, and kind of what you can access from us. I'll go ahead and bring that up. Available on our website, we have a full video tutorial on how to use the system, how everything works. It's available as a PDF as well in written form. So I'm not going to get into too much details like the nuts and bolts of how the system works, but I would like to show you how everything functions. This is the main kind of searching our collections page. It has links to our content management systems. And if you scroll down, here's our tutorial here. This is a relatively new system. We're still uploading collections into it. We have made a substantial amount of progress, but we have a little marker here that just shows how much left we have to add. So you can keep track of what proportions we have put in. So bringing up the portal itself. So this is the system here. From the basic search page, you could put in any keyword, conduct a search, and it will bring up everything you could be looking for. So example, if we typed in education, is deciding to be slow today. Oh, that's embarrassing. Sorry about that. Let me try something different here. Click one of our featured collections and see if that cooperates. Here we go. So in this, we can see a directory of our collections. You can open up individual entries and see, in this case, newspapers. You can go through and see what newspapers we have available on microfilm. And we have these kind of pages available for a variety of collections. You can also do a basic keyword search to kind of canvas everything. So this is not our digital archives. This doesn't have digitized materials, but this is an index of everything that we have. And so it can help you see what our holdings contain. One thing I will advise to check out, if we go into the advanced search feature, we can see a variety of fields that we can fill in. As I said, the tutorial will kind of give you a better idea of how all of this functions, but something I'd specifically like to show you is the feature here. We go into record type, selecting series. We could put in a record group number, let's say 1800, which is our military records record group. We hit search. Series, in this case, refers to series descriptions. That is, sorry, put that in the wrong field. Record group number is what I need. Series descriptions are written out for each kind of subset of a collection, and they describe kind of what records they contain, what scope they cover, what years they cover. And so by filtering by series, we can see specifically just the descriptions associated with every set of records. So if we open up one here, within our series description, we can see the scope of the records, what dates they cover, a description of what they are, how much is in the collection in terms of volume, and even a description of what kind of condition they're in. And so by filtering by series, you can enter in a record group. Maybe you can find that number through the basic search, filter it down more, and then see descriptions of everything that collection contains. So I mentioned digital archives. We do have digital collections hosted on the website. That all goes through Content DM. That's the platform that we use. I'll go ahead and bring that up. We are constantly digitizing new collections, making them available online. We are a relatively small institution and we don't have a ton of staff. So it is an ongoing effort. We do a lot of it, but it is not always the fastest going. But everything that we do have available, we have listed here. We can see a variety of highlighted collections that we can look at. We can also search by keyword. Let's see, we'll select Delaware in World War II, for example. And this will bring up a variety of digitized photographs, documents, maps, everything that we have that we get scanned, we will eventually upload to this platform. So you can search by keyword, search by collection. You can further narrow things down, scroll through. Everything that you can find here can be downloaded again for free from our website. So if you're looking for any kind of images or scanned documents, all those can be located through this platform. Now, as I mentioned, because not everything is digitized, Some records, if you find them in our finding aids through the portal, if it's something that you want to see, if you want to have scanned, contact us by email. We're happy to scan for you, send you a copy, because you're a teacher, you're a state employee doing this for your role as a state employee. All of this is completely free. We do not charge scanning fees for you. If you're needing this for your classroom, there will be no charge, no fee associated with it. So if there's anything at all you need, if you have any questions about our holdings, want access to anything that you find in our finding aids, we are more than happy to accommodate. So that brings us to the end of our program here. So if anyone would like to visit the archives, whether on your own or with your department for professional development, you can join us here in the Mabel Lloyd Ridgely Research Room. We're located in Dover, right next door to Legislative Hall. We're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. As I said, we're also open on Saturday mornings, the first Saturday of every month. If you're coming in on your own, appointments are strongly encouraged. They're not mandatory. Feel free to drop by if you have spare time. But if there's specific things that you are looking for, specific topics, specific records, we can have that ready and pulled for you ahead of time, just really help you get the most out of your time with us. If you're looking to bring in, a team of teachers or your whole department, if you wanted to do a professional development day, appointments are most definitely encouraged. Let us know what you're looking for. We will tailor the experience to you, have everything ready to go, and make sure that you can get as enriching of an experience as you can. You can reach us by phone at 302-744-5000 or by email at archives@delaware.gov. And our website, if I didn't mention before, is archives.delaware.gov.